39 Italian immigrants are victims of lynchings across the United States between 1886 and 1916. This photograph, taken in September 1910, shows the lynching of 2 Italians in Tampa, Florida. The next day it appears on hundreds of postcards. The largest lynching in the history of the United States takes place in New Orleans in 1891 and involves the murder of 11 Italian immigrants.
That the fact that you have these number of instances of Italians being lynched in the late 19th, early 20th century, I think speaks to the racial component, the fact that they were seen as not quite white.
The lynching of the 11 Italian Americans in New Orleans is the single largest lynching in American history. The lynching of the 11 Italian Americans in New Orleans is the single largest lynching in American history. Lynching was primarily a way of disciplining people who were outside the boundaries, or perceived to be outside the boundaries of civilization, so African Americans, Italian Americans. Whenever they would do something that suggested that they were not keeping in their place, this would be used as a form of discipline, a public, violent form of discipline, to demonstrate to members of the dominant group that they were still in control.
Censored. When we think about the post-Civil War South, we think about how one group was treated as second-class citizens. They faced lynchings and were called names like mongrels and the missing link between man and ape. But we're not talking about blacks. We're talking about the Italians' dark, ugly treatment in history after arriving in America. Let's talk about it tonight with an Italian American who uncovered her family's sad truth.
Is Danielle Romero. Glad to have you here on The Factor Uncensored. I said I was intrigued by your YouTube channel that goes into the history of the Italians and their arrival here in America. For many people who didn't know, they were treated horribly. When you think about how African Americans, blacks were treated in the beginning, and when the Italians arrived here, they were considered lower than black people in some instances where they encountered lynchings and just all kinds of atrocities. Right, Danielle?
It really opened my eyes to the experience of different immigrants coming into the United States and how they would be immediately grouped upon arrival. And for the Italians, they were happy to just live where they lived, and they weren't so worried about staying with one group or staying away from another group. And they kind of naturally settled in African-American communities, especially in the South, and for a whole host of reasons that there was a lot of pushback. But a lot of them would be relegated to the, quote, colored sections. And, you know, they, like we discussed, they were lynched. Actually, the largest mass mob lynching was Italian Americans, March 14th, 1891. I had never heard of this before. And it just was, this is eye-opening. It's eye-opening. And I wonder why is this something that nobody knows?
And of course, the way they were treated and how they were described. I saw some of the videos and names like mongrels. It was just mind-blowing how Americans just despised them.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the language gets reapplied over and over again. So it was Southern Italians, so they look a little different than Northern Italians, you know, darker. And, you know, a lot of social Darwinists said that these are the missing link between humans and chimps. And how often do we hear this kind of language for a group that's being degraded? So in this instance, it was being applied to Italian.
Poorly they were treated. I think you had a document, even from New York City, where they said, here's the rates to pay whites, here's the rates, here are the rates to pay blacks, and below the blacks, this is what you pay Italians.
There was pushback from Italy. Italy was getting reports of what was happening to the Italian immigrants, and they were very angry. And so in order to placate Italy, the country, President Harrison instituted the first Columbus Day. And it was, but I would say not until after World War II, where Italians were put in internment camps, which I also just learned. I would say that they didn't really make the jump to being accepted until probably after World War II.